Canadian war memorials do more than mark history. They carry memory, meaning, and message. In North Vancouver's Victoria Park stands one such reminder, the Victoria Park Cenotaph, a monument built of granite and grief, service and sacrifice. This cenotaph is not only a tribute to the fallen, it's a living symbol of the values that define our community and country. Courage, resilience, responsibility, cooperation, communication, and thoughtfulness. Unveiled in 1923, the Victoria Park Cenotaph was North Vancouver's response to the staggering loss of the First World War, a conflict in which over 66,000 Canadians gave their lives. Canada, then still a dominion of the British Empire, had entered the war in 1914 and saw more than 650,000 soldiers serve overseas. The Cenotaph's designers, Henry Blackadder and Alexander Mackay, were veterans themselves. They understood firsthand what was being remembered. They chose to build a quiet space of reflection, a place where grief could take shape. Carved from locally quarried granite, the monument originally honored soldiers who died in the Boer War and the First World War. But the story didn't end there. Over time, as Canada answered new calls to service, the cenotaph evolved. Inscriptions for the Second World War and the Korean War were added, and later came two significant additions, Afghanistan and peacekeeping. In May 2013, new engravings recognized these missions and the shifting nature of military service in the 21st century. Today, the monument no longer simply records battles. It acknowledges Canadian values like diplomacy, service, global cooperation, and humanitarianism. Indeed, the cenotaph reminds us that sacrifice isn't always made on the front lines. Sometimes it's found in the quiet moments of protecting peace, rebuilding shattered lives, and standing up for those who cannot stand alone. Even its design speaks volumes. On one face is inscribed the glorious dead, surrounded by battle names like Ypres, Vimy, and Korea. These names echo pivotal moments in history, like the Second Battle of Ypres in April 1915, Canada's first major engagement, and the Battle of Vimy Ridge in 1917, where Canada suffered over 10,600 casualties. But unlike towering statues of conquest, this cenotaph stands in quiet dignity. It doesn't glorify war, it invites reflection. This is part of a broader Canadian tradition of remembrance, one shaped by artists like Emmanuel Hahn, who often sculpted sorrow rather than celebration. The message is clear. War is not to be idolized, but to be understood. And each year, we come back to understand it again. On the morning of November 11th, 2024, hundreds of people gathered at the Victoria Park Cenotaph. The service opened with reflections on the 80th anniversary of D-Day, the Allied landing in Normandy, where more than 15,000 Canadian troops took part. Wreaths were laid by members of the Royal Canadian Legion, Royal Canadian Sea and Army Cadets, and by representatives from the city and district of North Vancouver. After the ceremony, people placed their poppies next to the wreaths. As the veterans departed, the crowd applauded, not as performance, but as quiet gratitude. It's in these gestures, small and solemn, that the cenotaph's message is passed on. A student laying a poppy, a veteran pausing to remember a friend, a community standing together in silence. These moments are acts of cooperation and communication across generations. They remind us that remembrance isn't just about what happened, it's about who we choose to be because of it. The names carved into the cenotaph belong to people from places like Lynn Valley, Lonsdale, and Edgemont in North Vancouver. They were clerks, carpenters, and students who stepped into roles far beyond what they had known. Their courage wasn't loud, it was quiet and unwavering. They didn't go because they had no fear. They went despite it. And as we remember their courage, we must also shoulder our responsibility. Responsibility to remember and learn from history, not only on November 11th, but every day. Responsibility to protect the freedoms they defended, and to work towards a future where peace is not just remembered, but lived. As Valour Canada reminds us, remembering without action is just forgetting in slow motion. The cenotaph also reminds us of such resilience. It has weathered storms, been rededicated, and reshaped to reflect Canada's evolving military story. Just as it has endured, so too has our collective commitment to memory. Each new generation that gathers around it breathes new life into its meaning. But the cenotaph isn't frozen in the past. It lives in the present. It continues to teach, challenge, and inspire. It stands not only for what has been lost, but for what must be preserved: peace, integrity, and unity. So when we pass by that tall granite obelisk in Victoria Park, it's worth stopping for a moment, to remember, to reflect, and most of all, to recommit. Because the Victoria Park Cenotaph is more than stone. It's a mirror. It reflects who we were, and it calls us to decide who we want to be.